Welcome to Unofficial Canon, the Star Wars podcast. My name is Tavin.
I'm Brendan.
And we are continuing yet again our conversation on Phantom Menace. I don't even want to think about how many episodes we've been talking about this movie.
It's best not to.
And with talking about it so many times, we've had a little bit of confusion. We missed a major scene that we kind of wanted to talk about.
We have to go back.
We're going back.
Did the future?
Future past, long time ago? I don't know. Anyway, the point is we missed a scene, and the scene in question is the one with Sidious and Darth Maul on Coruscant. And it's actually our first little peek at Coruscant. We're not told that it's Coruscant at this point, but you know.
Nerds knew.
Nerds probably knew. And basically it's just like, it's Sidious and Maul, and they're on like a balcony, and they're talking about soon our revenge will be at hand. And there's a few things to take note in my mind about this scene. One is that like George Lucas realized like, I can't show as much of Palpatine's face because they'll know, even though everyone
knew.
But like specifically, he really only shows like his nose. And there's a very awkwardly framed scene where it's like he's really in the foreground and then Maul's kind of in the background, and like the proportions feel really off, and it's obvious that he just composited them together in post. And again, this movie has really bad compositing in it. But the thing that's interesting, and the reason I wanted to go back to the scene, is because if you have been listening along so far, we have also been talking about what happens in the novelization of Phantom Menace.
Thanks to Terry Brooks.
Thanks to Terry Brooks, you godsend of a man who took on a task
Nobody would sign up for.
No, like my hat's off to Terry Brooks because he does his best to fix a bunch of stuff in the movies, and we're not quite sure how much of it was him and how much of it was like an earlier draft of the script that made sense before George Lucas, a proven terrible editor. Like historically, George Lucas has not been able to fix movies in the edit.
He's an ideas guy.
And
if you know many ideas guys, they don't do real things.
And on a small exactly. On a small tangent, that's why Empire is so good, because he was basically just an executive producer on
He was
movie.
sidelined on that movie.
He paid the bills. That was basically it. And then I think I've heard that he gave Lawrence Kasdan a bit of direction on the script, and that was it.
Probably.
Like,
again, he's an ideas guy.
Yeah, he's an ideas guy, right? Anyway, so in the book, Terry Brooks gives us a little bit of information about like the Sith and their history, and basically none of this lines up with any of the canon that I know to exist in the EU. The old EU, let me mind you. Again, I am not as strong in my knowledge of EU as Brendan here is.
Oh, whoa. That's putting a lot on my shoulders.
Well, I think it's true. But anyway, so it basically sets up that like at some point the Jedi, there was some guy who kind of turned away from the Jedi.
Okay, and he was the first Sith?
He was like the main leader of the Sith. And then like approximately 50 other Jedi eventually kind of fell under line in him.
Okay.
And the Sith kind of eventually destroyed themselves because they're always after power. Like there's no loyalty to like a hierarchy, a bureaucracy like there is in the Jedi.
Right.
So basically they ended up destroying themselves and creating even further factions, and then the Jedi just kind of picked them off.
One by one and just like, yeah.
What's very strange is that Terry Brooks insinuates that Palpatine was one of these original Sith.
Ah, so Palpatine was once a Jedi.
And has been around for approximately 2,000 years.
Oh, he looks good for 2,000.
Yeah. So, which doesn't really...
That doesn't hold up at all.
Doesn't hold up to anything. And if you understand how the old canon used to work, it was basically like anything was canon until George Lucas...
Said no.
So, like, the moment that the Plagueis novel came out, this explanation didn't become canon anymore. But it is kind of interesting because it, like... it gives more motivation, I think, to Maul, because you get a sense that he's way more angry about it than.
Which is good, because I mean, I wouldn't even say Maul's a one-dimensional character. Maul is a face.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to flesh that out would be nice, because the Phantom Menace didn't flesh that out at all.
No, and that's another big complaint that a lot of people have with this movie, is they just kind of waste Maul. And it's funny because you get back into the Clone Wars TV show and they pick it back up because it's an interesting character that deserves a little more time, right? And if we're talking as a whole, these prequel movies, one of the big problems is that they introduce a new villain every single movie.
Yes.
Which still feels problematic because you get to really like hate Darth Vader in the original movies. And in this one, you don't really get there.
No, you never do.
With anyone.
And I guess the ultimate idea would be that Sidious is the ultimate bad guy for the 3 movies. The problem with that is that he's such a joy to watch in that you don't view him necessarily as a villain, just as someone who's achieving their goals. Maybe he's the main character.
Some would say that he might be the Phantom Menace.
Oh!
Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that scene because I think it is kind of interesting. And if you get a chance to like read the novelization, and full warning, about 3/4 through it, it really starts to hurt as much as the movie. Like I had a really hard time finishing the book, but I did. I read every line and every word. But yeah, so that's
more dedicated man than I.
that's a scene that happened, and we're gonna move on from there. So
right.
Last episode we left off with them. They had just
Anakin conceived his plan.
Anakin conceived his plan of like doing the whole pod race shenanigans, and Qui-Gon silently accepted.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I would like to say about this scene is it's probably one of the most wooden scenes in the whole movie.
Oh my God.
And it's really strange because like you have Natalie Portman, who even at, I don't know if she was 14 at the time, but she was a child actress, and she's amazing in like Leon the Professional and all these movies. Great actress. And then you've got Liam Neeson, again, great actor, and even he comes off super wooden and like ridiculous. And even what's his name, Jake
Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd. He's not the greatest child actor that I've ever seen, but I've seen him in other movies do better.
And honestly, on a rewatch of Phantom Menace, like when I watched it as a 15-year-old, and at that stage in my life, as most of stages in my life, I really wanted to be an actor. So I was sitting there being like, I could have been a better Anakin than this idiot, right? And like, shut up, 15-year-old Brendan, that's ridiculous. On a rewatch now, you're right. As a child actor, he's not even serviceable. He's okay. Like there's 1 or 2 bits where it's like, ugh. But then I think how many child actors could get that, you know?
Well, and I think not to hate on George Lucas too much, but even he would admit that he's not an actor's director.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the performance issues in this movie come from the problem that he's not
telling his actors what they need to know.
No. And it comes back to George Lucas being an idea man. He's not good at the details, right? And I've seen directors get really good performances out of kids, and it just doesn't happen here. But it's so far-reaching that it's like Liam Neeson, Natalie Portman, whoever's playing Shmi.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, is that a French actress or an Irish actress? I can't.
Considering not only the use of Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, but also one of the pilots on the Jedi ship, the female pilot sitting on the left, she's an Irish actress. I would bet Shmi is Irish.
Well, what's weird is her accent, like,
drifts between the two.
Shifts between, like, kind of like there's a little bit of French coming through and there's a little bit of Irish coming through, so I'm always questioning that. And I could Google it right now, but I'm not going to.
No, you know what? It's better to speculate.
So anyway, so we cut to the next scene. It's the next morning.
Yep.
And they're walking to Watto's shop. And Watto's like, so the boy tells me you want to sponsor him in a race. And Qui-Gon's like, yep. And Watto's like, well, what are you going to put for the entry fee? And he's like, I'm going to put up my ship.
Yep.
And the most convoluted series of gambling decisions begins. So Qui-Gon is putting up the ship as his half of the entry fee, I think.
Yep.
And supposedly he'll get that back.
Well, yeah, and he's also putting up his pod, which is Anakin's pod.
Yes.
Because what he needs is Watto's driver, who is Anakin. So it's a 50-50 split down the middle. And then initially the winnings are split 50-50.
Well, here's what I'm confused about.
Yeah.
Okay, so because there's money that needs to be paid to the Hutts.
Yes. To race.
And so Watto is going to put up physical currency.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon can put his ship up.
Yeah.
And then for Watto and Qui-Gon, their agreement is Watto puts Anakin as the pod racer.
Yeah.
And then Qui-Gon provides the pod.
Yeah.
So everything is balanced. You're right. Now my question is like, A, do the Hutts accept the ship as the entry fee?
Well, I thought so what it would be is Watto puts the full entry fee up, but then he gets the ship.
Oh.
To kind of compensate that loss.
Yes, I think
because I can't imagine Jabba would be like, "You're only going to pay half." Yeah, but we got this Nubian ship. It doesn't have a working hyperdrive, but it's a Nubian ship. Like, the Hutts wouldn't go for that.
So here's what happens. Because I'm confused now. Qui-Gon barters with Watto to let Anakin race.
Yeah.
After some haggling,
yeah,
Watto agrees to front the entry fee, and Anakin, if Qui-Gon provides the pod.
Mm-hmm.
So Watto's going to do the fee and provide Anakin if Qui-Gon provides the pod. Then there's there's a bet between them immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So if Anakin wins,
yeah,
Watto keeps the winnings.
All the winnings.
Minus the cost of the parts.
To fix the ship.
Yeah. If Anakin loses, Watto gets the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like Qui-Gon puts a win-win scenario, which he can't really say no to, right?
Exactly.
Because, I mean, and the other thing is that in the book, it's kind of clear that, like, Watto would have entered anyway. So it's kind of like, all right.
This is just saving Watto money.
Yeah, yeah. So they do that, and they're like, okay, fine. And then Padme starts to get all pissy about this plan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it's like her whole plan, the whole plan of coming along and being able to, like, make the Jedi do things completely falls apart. Which is hilarious because earlier in the book, they talk about how the Queen is actually an elected official on Naboo, and they always, like, vote the smartest person, and it just happened to be this like 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's the same concept as like Anakin and her are both supposed to be like these Mary Sue types, basically. And
by design.
Yeah, and she didn't think this particular situation through. And the only reason that she can't like enact any powers because they haven't gone back to the ship at this point.
Exactly.
Because the moment she got back to the ship, she'd be like, okay, let's change clothes. And I'm the Queen. I'm like, we ain't doing this, Qui-Gon. But Qui-Gon was not, at no point was like, we're going back to the ship.
Yeah, no, that never entered his mind.
Yeah.
Because he's living through the Force.
He's just following the Force. She doesn't know that, but that's what's happening. And this is where the movie always gets muddled. Like, I can't remember what scene comes next or what happens where. But there is some scene somewhere in this point where Qui-Gon, like, calls Obi-Wan, like he picks up his like flip phone, whatever, and he's like Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's on that line, like that, like he's just sitting there waiting, not he's not reading the book.
Honestly, it's such a waste of a character to have Ewan McGregor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, which he does well, and he's just sitting on a ship.
Well, the moment he's off the ship, he becomes kind of interesting, but it's just funny to me that like Obi-Wan's like an old housewife who's got nothing to do, just sitting by that old phone on the wall in the kitchen,
Hello?
Waiting for something to happen.
Hi, honey, are you coming home for dinner? Oh, that's too bad. What can I do for you?
Yeah, so Qui-Gon just, and what's weird is that, again, this is one of those things where it's not as bad as the earlier where we just cut into the middle of a conversation.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon's just saying something, but it just cuts to Obi-Wan saying like, if this plan fails, blah, blah, blah. And it still feels kind of like Qui-Gon should have explained it to Obi-Wan, but it's movies, so we can kind of get away with that.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, yeah, well, I think it's fine, and there's something about this boy. And then he just hangs up. And that's another thing that I noticed in this watch through, is that Qui-Gon will just continuously just hang up on, like, not, okay, bye, see you later, or over and out. Just like, and almost, there's one scene where he's like, kind of like he's still got like 2 or 3 words left in the sentence, and
but he's already closed it. Yeah,
he just hangs it up. And this isn't the only time this kind of happens. Earlier, when they jump down from that bridge and they're saving the people, he pulls out his lightsaber, he starts fighting people, and then he puts it away mid-battle, and then he force pushes some droids. And I'm like, what if they fired at you, Qui-Gon? Like, I know you have, like, the Force and can see into the future, but surely...
you can't read the mind of robots.
No, that's insane. That's insane.
I think there's also a scene that I noticed. He force pushes, and then the camera pans, so then this scene is just CGI. And there's 3 robots, but he only force pushes one of them. And it's like, come on, animators.
I don't doubt that.
Makes me sad.
This whole movie makes me sad.
So where are we?
So they're gambling. They're gambling.
Right.
They're gambling. They're somewhere in the gambling. Somewhere between the first gamble and then the second gamble. Which
added a whole other layer of...
Which I think there's a scene... Okay, no, there's actually some stuff that happens between this.
Right.
Because there's a scene of him, like, working on the pod.
Yeah, and then Jar Jar gets his face numbed.
Jar Jar gets his face numbed, even after Anakin was like, don't do that.
Yep.
And then off in the distance during this whole thing, like, Shmi is watching, and so is Qui-Gon.
Oh, yeah, and he's like, so tell me about the father.
Yeah, telling me about the father, and she's, like, kind of awkward and sits there quietly, as you would if the story is he had no father.
He had no one.
Which is, like, the best acting from this actor in the whole movie. And then she's like, there was no father.
I can't explain it.
I carried him. I gave birth to him. Something like that, right? And Qui-Gon's like, oh, okay.
I like how little Qui-Gon was taken aback by that.
Well, again, in the book, we can give more context because the whole thing is like he senses something strange about this boy, and then that lines up with some prophecy that he knows of, right?
Right.
And so that's the moment he's kind of like, oh, maybe this kid is this chosen one,
right?
Which later on in the book I really like. They give a little bit of Obi-Wan's perspective on the situation, where Obi-Wan's like, there's dozens of prophecies.
Yeah, right. Like there should be.
So because as viewers, we're like, if this is like the prophecy. Right. This is supposed to be the Judeo-Christian. There will be a Messiah, and he will come.
Exactly.
Right. But then there's like your only understanding is that like he's going to be really strong with the Force, and that he's not going to have a father.
Right.
You're like, okay, but if you look at the Jewish prophecies for the Messiah, there's dozens of them.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like you would be like, okay, he doesn't fit all these other things, right? So this doesn't make any sense.
But this one, he fits one.
He fits one.
And it's a weird one.
Oh, it's a weird one. It's so weird. So yeah, Anakin fixes up the ship.
Right.
And there's a very famous, it's working. Which like the engines are running, but like his pod part's not like floating. So
yeah.
Like I don't know if it's actually working.
Well, it's working for a 9-year-old.
It's working. It's going to go real fast for a 9-year-old. And then we cut to, there might be some more Darth Maul just like looking around, but I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
The next scene I remember is Qui-Gon cleaning the cut.
Right. And then saying to Obi-Wan, get this blood analyzed.
Yeah, and then it's immediately analyzed. Don't have to send it to a Coruscant lab.
No.
Computers can do that.
This Naboo royal ship,
I don't understand,
has a blood lab designed to detect midichlorians.
The only thing that would have been worse if they had been like, if he hadn't called Obi-Wan, he just went over to R2 and was just like stuck in an R2, and then R2 was like hollow projected like 20,000, and it's just like, oh, that's how many midichlorians you have, and like
it would be the greater than sign because it was over 20,000.
And yeah. Well, and what's weird at this point is like, as an audience, we're not really told anything about midichlorians. We're just told that he's got a lot of them, and he's got more than Yoda.
Right.
So at this point, the Force is not broken for the audience.
Oh, it was broken for me as a kid.
At this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're quantifying it.
Yeah, that's true.
How could you have a level of 20,000 X units that give you the Force?
I got 20,000 forces. That's how many I got.
Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying.
I mean, as a 15-year-old, when I was watching this the first time, I had already checked out of this movie. But this is when it started to like destroy Star Wars for me.
Anyway, so I think basically nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's the day of Banto Eve or
Oh,
whatever,
the big race day.
the big race day, and we're getting ready for the race.
Yay!
And the scene opens with Watto going, "I want to see your ship the moment after the race," and Qui-Gon's like, "Hey, dude, patience.
Mm-hmm.
That's not gonna happen." And then Qui-Gon makes the bet for the boy.
Oh God,
Which,
yeah. The second layer.
The second layer, which is, so if he loses, I can't remember what he puts up.
Yeah. I don't remember what. I just remember that if Anakin wins, Watto gets all the winnings, but then the boy and Shmi go with Qui-Gon. And then Watto's like, that's not worth 2 slaves.
I think that he tries. I can't remember. I think that maybe it's the pod.
It could be.
I think it's the pod itself.
Well, but I mean, it's a moot point regardless.
Yeah, the point is that he makes some other crazy deal for the boy, and for some reason can't get Shmi.
Yeah, because that would be too expensive.
Which would be too expensive. And so, do you want to hear the dark side of Star Wars canon in my head now? So I've always said that slavery doesn't make sense in the Star Wars universe,
Right.
because there's no way that a droid,
Which doesn't eat, doesn't sleep.
is more expensive to have than a human.
Yep.
So there's only a couple advantages to humans that I can think of. One is that like humans are kind of creative. So like
Mhm.
Anakin can fix things. He's got a unique talent to it. However, I'm sure you could train that into a droid. You could train a droid to just fix everything.
Well, R2-D2 fixed the shield generator uniquely, right? So I mean,
Yeah. It's hard to say, but the one other thing that slaves would be good for is sex.
oh yeah.
Like you've got Twi'leks all over the place. Like in Return of the Jedi, when Jabba like puts Leia in that slave outfit, that's not just like, oh, she looks pretty in that. She is her. That's human trafficking
Yeah, absolutely.
at that point.
Yeah.
And no one talks about that.
No.
Everyone that I know that's really into slave Leia is just like, oh, that's when I became a man when I saw that, and I felt tingles in my pants. And,
Yeah.
which is very strange to me.
I'm a heterosexual male and I don't understand that moment. Like, she's attractive,
Yeah.
but there's layers going on
Well,
there.
it's just like you hear, like in Carrie Fisher's book, she talks about guys coming up to her and being like, "You were the first woman that I masturbated to," and it's like, who are these people?
Why share that detail?
Anyway, so
No wonder she did a lot of drugs.
and so I was like, why is Shmi valuable by herself?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
for Anakin, she's kind of a caretaker, and
Mhm.
like if you separated them, like Anakin probably wouldn't do shit anymore, right?
Yeah.
But by herself, she is good for only one thing:
Yep, more babies.
more babies or just pleasure.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because that's the it's very strange, because I remember watching this as a 9-year-old and being like, oh, she's like the mother type.
Mhm.
And in the book, there's a bunch of dialogue or lots of lines about how like describing her as like she was once a very beautiful girl, and now she's a little weathered, but Anik would still say that she's pretty. And watching it, I'm like, yeah, she's a pretty good looking older woman, right? Which is a very strange place for me to be now in my life, where it's like she was my mom, right? In my mind, she was my mother type, and now she's like, okay, well, she's like an attractive older woman.
Mhm.
So that's the dark side of Star Wars. And in fact, she's sold off into marriage.
Yeah.
Which is
It adds a whole other level to the freaking Lars family.
it's George Lucas's way of selling her into the sex trade in a PG movie.
Safe way.
In the next PG
Yeah.
movie, right? Even though she's captured by Tusken Raiders and raped to death. Anyway, we'll talk about another episode. Yeah, so he makes this crazy bet. He uses the Force to adjust some dice.
Yeah.
So he gets what he wants. So looking this up, yeah, he wants. So Watto has made a side bet on Sebulba outside of this gamble, and Qui-Gon wants in on the action. So he bets his pod
Right.
for Anakin to win, and he asks in return for him to put up Anakin himself. So
Right.
So yeah, we were basically right about that. So yeah, they do that. They agree.
That's set.
That's set. and then it's time for the race.
Right.
And I think this episode's
That's-
a little short by a few minutes, but I
Well-
think we're gonna leave it on there because
Yeah,
the race there's a lot in
that's
the
gonna
race.
yeah.
So we're gonna leave it at that. And I think we're also starting to feel a little tired. Need a little break. Need a little stretch of the legs
And brain.
and the brain, because this is the part of Phantom Menace that always loses me. Like, always loses me. Like it like when you see it on paper, you're like, okay, yes, I get it.
Sitting through it.
And trying to remember, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. So thank you for wading through with us
Yeah.
this far.
Thank you.
We're glad that the 3 people that listen to this podcast are still with us. We
Come
will
around for next episode.
come around for next episode when we actually get to pod racing, the thing that everyone likes in this movie.
Yeah, it's the most popular redeeming feature of this movie.
There is one other redeeming feature, but we will talk about that probably 7 episodes
Later
from
on.
now.
When we're old men.
Older men. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We will see you next time.